Growth Pod is brought to you by Genero, a leading growth agency in the Nordics. We interview marketing experts, business leaders, and entrepreneurs to uncover the stories and strategies behind profitable growth.
All right, today I have with me Hans-Peter Siefen from Nordic Business Forum. Hans-Peter, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Great to be here. And perhaps it's easier to just call me Happe during the conversation.
Okay, yeah, that makes it easier. Okay, so Happe, the story behind Nordic Business Forum is what we're here to talk about to begin with, and it's kind of, I think it's so fascinating that it's considering where it started and where it is now as the biggest business and leadership event in Europe.
Well, there are business related events in other genres like startup events and exhibitions, which are much bigger than the Nordic Business Forum is in some ways, or in many ways even. But as a leadership conference, business leadership conference, it is probably the biggest in Europe. Yes,
which is pretty incredible. And so, how did it get started? The first event was in 2010. It was in Jyväskylä. So what was the idea that this was 14 years ago. What was the vision? Was there a clear market opportunity that you spotted, or was this like a scratching your own itch?
Yeah, I'm not sure if I understood anything about market opportunities or trying to figure out a market opportunity. We just started doing something that we kind of were excited about. And I feel quite many times, I mean, when you sort of do something for yourself, you actually at the same time do something that others find interesting as well. So I attended my first business seminar in 2003 as a young man at Helsingin Kulttuuritalo, Helsinki Culture House. Traveled in from Kouvola, where I lived at that point of time, and that experience was super inspiring and good. They spoke about goal setting and sales and leadership, and then later on I tried to implement some of those learnings. They also indeed told that you should set goals and write down your dreams, and I did so. I don't remember when exactly, but probably later on in 2003 or early 2004, the latest, when I made this kind of a thought map of what I would like to do professionally in the future, or what kind of portfolio of sorts my future business could have, and the biggest bubble on that chart was, I think I wrote down education or training or something like that. So inspired of the experience I had in those first seminars that I attended, I wrote down a dream of someday having a business of my own somehow in that field, doing something similar, and then didn't even think that would be anytime soon. But later on, 6 years later, I was in the surgery. As I had a knee injury, and it was a bit bigger knee surgery, and I spent a week at the hospital. And with me, I had a notebook, just like I have here next to me now as well. And I started thinking about the future, that one day I would like to have something like this, and wrote down some thoughts on how we could make it happen. I had a bit earlier started a small company with my university friend Yuri Linden, and then I called Yuri that, hey, now I know how we can initiate this business training business of some sorts. And yeah, basically the idea of Nordic Business Forum was born in that hospital bed, and the plan started with having small evening seminars, which would then promote a bigger event each year, which one day could be of even of some international significance. Although in the hospital bed, I didn't definitely think of as big of an event as it is nowadays. But yeah, that's how we started. So in 2009, I think we had our first 1 or 2 evening seminars already at the end of 2009, and then more during the early 2010, and then in late October 2010 we had the first 2-day seminar, which then became the Nordic Business Forum later on. So that's how it all started.
It's interesting. I think there are so many lessons for other entrepreneurs about, doing the thing that you're interested in, having kind of a big, maybe fuzzy goal at the end, or like somewhere in the distance, but you're willing to start very practically, evening seminars. What were the topics that you focused on in the beginning, and who gave the lectures? Like, how did you get people to want to be interested? And the reason I'm asking is because I feel like this type of business education is as much about content as it is about the person delivering it. So if, Elon Musk comes on stage and says something, it's going to carry a whole different weight if it's some other person. So how were you able to build that kind of like, how do you get people to attend your seminars, basically?
Yeah. All of the speakers until the end of 2010 were local speakers from Finland, but with some following behind them, basically. So for instance, Jethro Roosted was a lot in the media in those times after the Apprentice show that he participated in, and we did a sales seminar with him, an evening seminar on sales. And there were a couple of other speakers on that as well. And similar, Jari Sarasvuo was the main speaker. This Finnish entrepreneur was the main speaker of the first 2-day seminar, which was what Nordic Business Forum came about in late 2010. And the late great Juhani Töytäri. Juhani Torkki was actually also speaking at that event, but he's still young and kicking. But unfortunately, Juhani Töytäri, just founder of Positiivarit in Finland, just passed away maybe half a year ago or whatever it might be. But yeah, so local speakers, and we started filling in the room with mainly phone calls. And that's what we do a lot still, but mainly through me and Yuri calling on people whom we felt might be interested in attending. And also quite significantly with the help of Facebook and with the help of a newsletter that we started to produce once a month. So building and growing a subscription base for that newsletter, and then publishing content also on social media, mostly Facebook at that stage, and running Facebook ads. And I'm not sure if it was really a new feature, but actually Facebook events back then, I remember, was creating an event on Facebook was actually a surprisingly effective way of getting ticket sales done back then in early 2010 or whatever it was. So, and of course these tools have changed along the way. and in meetings, not only on phone calls, but in face-to-face meetings as well, naturally.
Yeah. So you had the first event was only Finnish speakers. The following year, 2011, you already had Al Gore. So almost, he was like very, very close to being the president of the United States, and obviously a very significant thought leader globally. So how were you able to get speakers like Al to come to Finland, first of all, which is not the most attractive of destinations, perhaps, and then also to attend this event where you were just getting started, you did not have the brand recognition that you have today. So how did you go about taking? It seems like it was such a big leap from year to year.
It was a big leap, yeah. And I think the answer to your question that how did we get Al Gore, or how do we get these kinds of people, especially in the early days, to our event, the answer is courage and maybe some kind of a foolness as well. Naiveness, so to say, I don't know. But yeah, that's actually a funny story. It was still before the first 2-day event with the local speakers took place in 2010. But I mean, we had succeeded with ticket sales to the extent that we knew that we will do the event next year also. And I mean, that was all the time the plan. So even if we didn't have the ticket sales, we would have probably still continued to try. But we had some confidence that we can pull it off and grow for the next year. So the idea was that, yeah, let's try to have some kind of perhaps an international speaker also at the event next year, and then also thinking was that maybe we should make the event about responsibility and how responsibility can be a clever asset for a company. Meaning, when you do good things, people like you. They want to continue buying products from you, and word of mouth is generated when you actually do good for the world with and through your business. So that was a topic that we thought might be a good main theme for the event in 2011. And then one evening, I don't know what I was doing, but I got the idea that, hey, yeah, let's bring Al Gore, or let's try, and that would be a perfect fit with the team and theme, and of course a huge name. So I called Jyri again and said that now I know, let's try to bring Al Gore to Jyväskylä. And Jyri said that, yeah, a great idea, but I don't think Al Gore has never been in Jyväskylä. Might not be the easiest thing to do, but yeah, we went on Google and Googled contact information for Al Gore, and I found contact information for Al Gore's office somewhere online, and there was an instruction to send a fax. A fax back in that day. Still, I don't know if it was old info, but anyway, I did formulate the fax, and I have the letter here still at our office here in Jyväskylä. I sent it out, and as I had learned, you should never trust on just sending a message. You should definitely follow up. So I think the same or the next day, I also called the office to make sure they got my fax. And then the process started from there, and it took some half a year at least before we got the final answer that Vice President Al Gore would actually appear in Jyväskylä. And for quite long, people didn't really even believe that Al Gore is actually coming. So I think quite a big percentage of the business folks here in Jyväskylä, for instance, were thinking that these young men are probably trying to collect some money and leave. but so Al Gore appeared actually here in Jyväskylä, and we managed to, despite the weak belief in us, we also succeeded in selling 1,700 or 1,800 tickets that event, and made it slightly profitable as well. And and that was a great achievement, I would say, in the early days.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, I mean, the lesson there being that it's actually not, you don't have to have this super complicated advanced strategy. Sometimes it's just about picking up the phone, trying, being, like you said, maybe naive, foolish, can be helpful. I think I saw a video of Steve Jobs talking about how there's like two different types of people in the world. There's those people who pick up the phone. If they run into a problem, they pick up the phone, they call someone to get a solution. And then there are ones that just don't do that. And probably a huge percent of success comes down to picking up the phone, taking a risk, and make you try. Yeah.
Yeah, and I would say that a huge effect, a positive effect for success in general is to do things that you are afraid of doing. So grow your comfort zone in a sense, as long as those things are potentially things that could help you grow personally or as a business. So it always is good to try to, for example, have a habit of doing once a week something that you are afraid of doing. That phone call to that potential new client or new partner, which might be a new leap for you if it would actually succeed, even if you have quite a low, even if you would give quite a low likelihood for success with that call or that action, or whatever action it might be. Of course, nothing negative, nothing that would hurt someone or be unfair, or I don't know, but something that if it succeeds, it would bring you a step forward. And usually those are frightening things to do, so you need to have courage and be crazy enough to try. And yeah, I guess one thing that helped us out with that is that we had been in sales. We had done, until that moment, I had done sales for 6 years, and in sales you get a lot of rejection, and when you get a lot of rejection, and then at times you also land a sale, so you get some yeses, some rare yeses among the no's. That helps you in learning to do things that you are afraid of doing. So, and there are many other things that help in that as well, but I think sales is a good school for anyone who plans on building a business. And I mean, generally in life, I think it's a great thing to at some point do some sales. Doesn't hurt to grow a bit thicker skin for yourself. That's useful.
Absolutely. And I think the sales mindset, which is you expect to get a lot of rejection. So if you knock on a door, you get a no, you're not surprised, you just keep knocking. And it seems like some people have the expectation that they try something, and if it doesn't immediately work, they're like, oh, this is a dead end, I wasn't supposed to do this. So knowing that it's actually rejection and failure is part of the process, probably no other job teaches you that as well as sales.
I would imagine so, yes. Maybe oftentimes a scientist might face the same situation when they try to make something work. But then, I mean, if you are doing a test with there is not a human that is rejecting you on the other side. You are, or maybe in some research projects there are, but for example, trying to make the light bulb to shine, you are not rejected by people every day. You are rejected by the process or the technology. So, and when you are rejected by another human being, that feels bad, and you need to learn to cope with it, so to say.
For sure. Just to double click on that, because it's such an important, I mean, it's so fundamental. What tips or what strategies have you used to become better at that? Is it just you have to get repetitions, you have to develop that thick skin, or is there any other things that you've done or see other people do successfully to learn to cope with it?
Yeah, I think it's mostly just about practice and getting used to it. And but I do believe that there is also a philosophy that you could try to have as a mindset, so to say. So for instance, back in the day when a number of people were suspecting that we just might be selling tickets and leave, and no Al Gore would be coming, we didn't think that, fuck you, we don't want to work with you ever, or you are. We weren't insulted. We just believed that we need to humbly continue to do work to earn the trust of more people and more customers. So a humble approach and understanding that it's quite natural that not everyone has the belief in you in the beginning is I think a good mindset also, which might help.
For sure, absolutely. All these things are easier said than done, but like you said, practice is probably the only way or best way.
Yeah, yeah, definitely so.
So when you got Al Gore then in 2011, was that like a wow moment where you felt like, wow, this is really working? Or was there any point that stands out as you realize like, wow, this has become this really big thing that is actually, it has a life of its own. Like it's not just me representing it. Nordic Business Forum is a brand that people respect and there's strong demand and interest, not just across Finland and the Nordics, but even globally.
Well, it was definitely a moment at which our belief grew into making Nordic Business Forum something bigger, especially after we had also again landed some sales and actually saw that this will do a small profit financially rather than a loss. But to me, actually, probably the most important event that we have ever done was the year before, the first big one, or big. Back then we had 700 attendees, but we were aiming at 500 and managed to sell 700. The one where we had only local speakers as on stage. So doing the first one and seeing how people liked it and how they also purchased tickets to the next event with Al Gore and the others, Les Brown and Sauli Niinistö was coming and Alexander Stubb, although he needed to cancel later on. Originally he was coming, and so on, many others. So the first one was the biggest thing for us, I feel, and I still reckon it as the biggest turning point, so to say, rather than the next one with Al Gore. And perhaps also one that was a really memorable and I think still one of our best events ever was our 2013 event, which was still also in Jyväskylä. It was such a successful event, and with that event we actually made a loss. For us, quite a significant loss. But the customer experience was very good, and it helped us grow the event for next year by 2,000 more tickets sold. So from 3,300 to 5,300 the year after. There are many points at which we have made some big leaps or succeeded in some ways which have given us belief. And then there are some moments in which we failed quite badly and which have then made things more difficult for us as well.
Ups and downs. The the kind of the maybe value proposition, I'm guessing, has changed quite a bit over the years. Was it originally mostly about the speaker, or was networking about a big part of the whole package? And I feel like in recent years now, I mean, it's a whole event, and it's like it's curated. You're great attention to detail, so it's at a different scale than it was back then. But how has the value proposition and maybe the reasons that people continue coming back to Nordic Business Forum year after year, how has that evolved over the years?
So I think the value proposition has not changed at all. Only the words that we used might have changed. I mean, in the beginning they were also Finnish words, and nowadays they are English words. The target group is much more international, and I think in the first 2010 event, most people were from micro companies, super small companies. Back then, using the word startup was actually quite rare. At least for me, I didn't even recognize the word, probably still in 2009 or 2010. But anyway, the customer base was from super small companies and individual entrepreneurs. And nowadays the companies from which people come to the events are many of them are much bigger, although we still have a lot of people from small businesses as well, definitely, and that's an important mix, a very important mix. So I think scale has changed, and of course, in our skill in producing has changed quite dramatically. But the main reason for doing these events and the value proposition, so to say, hasn't changed all that much from my point of view.
Okay, I imagine that could be a really good thing. That stays the same. Well, of course, the execution changes as the event grows in size.
And target group changes as you earn the trust of I don't know. Could you say you earn the trust of higher profile clients? Not sure if that's a nice way to put it, but yeah, to convince a CEO of a public listed company to join an event is a different job than or can be a bit different job than convincing a sole entrepreneur from Kärsämäki to attend an event.
For sure. At least the language probably and the pitch needs to be a little bit different. So getting those great speakers, I mean, from early on and kind of raising the bar continuously, I'm guessing, has been a big part of it. You mentioned the one event that you were kind of thought that was the best one, and even though you made a loss, the customer or the guest attendee experience was so great. So what were the things that you focused on in addition to having great speakers that made for such a good customer or attendee experience?
Yeah, we have always tried to focus on surprising the customer, exceeding the expectations that customers have when they come to the event, and for the first timers it's much easier than for the ones who have already attended 10 times. But we still try to do so for the 10 timers as well each time. Back then I think we scaled up the level of surprises that we had at the event quite significantly. So, for instance, the event began without telling about it to anyone. It began by an appearance by Apocalyptica and Jenni Vartiainen, and the second day started by the late great Vesa-Matti Loiri, and earlier on, I think also just the mix on how we utilized audiovisual elements, music, sound and light was a big experience. And then quite early on, also starting from 2012, I would say, we started implementing quite an unusual customer service approach to the event. So that part of customer experience has really been in a big focus also.
I like that goal of surprising customers, because I feel like you could apply it really broadly to probably any company. Surprising in a positive in a positive sense, of course, but like setting that as a goal. I mean, I'm thinking, the companies that I know and how they work, like that question doesn't get asked. How can we possibly surprise our customers? I think, I mean, positive surprises are like, they resonate so emotionally. It snaps you out of like you're surprised, you're taken aback, and I think it leaves you, it impacts you on a very, very different level than you're just constantly delivering according to what has been communicated. So I feel like that's a really powerful question to ask in any company.
Definitely so, I agree. And at the same time, not necessarily easy to succeed with, but at least everyone should try.
Yeah, and like you said, I mean, when someone's been coming back 10 years in a row, the bar, the expectations grow, and the pressure for you to keep on delivering in surprises grows as well. But I can imagine that's a good thing. So obviously, I mean, you went to the audiovisual as one example. That requires that person to be there live to get the full experience. That wasn't possible during the pandemic, the lockdowns. So how were you able to navigate that? Because that must have been, I mean, it came very, I mean, it took us all by surprise. And I'm guessing you had the 2020 event already planned, the speakers lined up, everything, venues booked, and all of a sudden in February, March, the world just changes. So how were you able to handle that as a company?
Yeah, my gosh, February 2020. It's almost 5 years ago, but it still feels like yesterday. Somehow, those COVID years just went by, and then the years after, it still seems like pre-COVID and during COVID was just very recently. But yesterday, I figured that it's almost 5 years ago now. We didn't do too well during COVID, naturally, but I mean, we were not super successful in turning our revenues into virtual format. We had quite a big revenue for especially the Helsinki event. 9 million euros was the revenue of the, if I remember correct, just above 9 million euros, the event, which was held in 2019, just before COVID, and we had done probably 6 million euros of sales already for the, at least roughly, for the next event, which was due in September 2022, and then as we needed to cancel the event, that was quite a blow. And we had also an event coming up in Sweden, which we needed to cancel also. Luckily, we had a really wise board of directors who had challenged us to think about a business interruption insurance a couple of years earlier, which I found quite expensive as an insurance, but it really saved us for the first year of COVID. So we got our expenses covered. We needed to, of course, adjust our expenses, so we did have a lot of cuts from all kinds of general expenses in the organization, which was painful. And indeed, the event got cancelled, so our revenue decreased for the Finnish company, decreased from the 9 million, which I mentioned, to, I'm not sure if I remember correctly, but probably like 400,000 euros. But with the help of the insurance, we survived. And we had the event in Sweden, which we needed to cancel. We closed our office in Sweden. We had the insurance over there as well. And in Norway, we didn't have any insurance, but we pivoted and managed somehow. Let me see. in Norway, we turned the event into a virtual format quite successfully. So we survived in Norway also. And then 2021, the insurance didn't help us any longer at all. But then some subsidies kicked in. There was this business cost subsidy in Finland. In Sweden, we didn't get any, but we closed down the office as well. And in Norway, we still kind of iterated and managed surprisingly well and started to generate, of course, more and more revenues in Finland also virtually. But it was very difficult to turn 9 million euros of ticket sales and partnership sales into some virtual event sales. And we were quite brave. We had an M&A conversation with a colleague of mine in the Netherlands who runs a similar company in the Netherlands pre-COVID. And we put that on hold when COVID hit. But we then continued the conversation already at the end of 2020 or so. And in April 2021, we acquired a majority of his company in the Netherlands. And in the Netherlands as well, we managed to build up these virtual master classes, with which I think we even managed to do a small profit. But basically in all organizations, we needed to let go 1/3 of our employee base in the end. So after COVID, we had 1/3 less people working for us and with us, and then needed to start building it up again. And now we are bigger than we were pre-COVID, and growth is quite good now, luckily as well. Even if the economy is bad, but somehow we have managed anyway.
Pretty incredible foresight from the board. And I think, great example of like, if you have a board, if they come with one good piece of advice, that might be like enough to justify the.
Definitely. Many times over for I don't know how many years for. Well, honestly, for 100 years probably.
So like you said, obviously it's very difficult to translate that kind of experience and the revenue into a virtual format. How do you think about the future of the type of business that you're in? I'm thinking specifically how events are related to content. One example that comes to mind is the All In podcast, which started with just 4 friends talking, became a big podcast. Now they've done 2 or 3 events, which are, they attract big names. I don't know, ticket sales must be in the thousands, but not sure about numbers. But that's kind of an interesting example of how these things go. And obviously, the type of educational content that you are producing there at the event, there's tons of podcasts, there's books, there's all kinds of things. So how do you see your role at NBF in that kind of whole landscape of education as it's changing? It's a broad question, but I'm guessing you've spent quite a lot of time thinking about how you fit into the whole picture.
Quite interestingly, you described this podcast, which has started to do events as well. So I don't know, and I'm eager to find out. And COVID was a period in which a lot of new means of attending events were innovated and adopted. So attending an event virtually instead of physically is a known concept, and you might choose to do so quite often times. The same has been true for concerts for a longer time. You could watch Metallica at the Olympic Stadium on TV or online, or you could choose to watch a boxing match on Netflix or pay-per-view from your sofa at home, or still a lot of people want to go on site to see the boxing match. And you could listen to this all-in podcast from your sofa or in your car, but then when they organize an event, you might still want to listen it via the podcast, but you also might want to go on site and experience it in person. And even if streaming of music and live streaming of concerts and broadcasting of concerts on TV and so on has become quite common and popular, still those events, music festivals, concerts and so on, they are attended much more than they have ever been before. So somehow the option of watching it on TV or on your sofa has expanded the reach. But even if it's a lucrative and easy option, people have still wanted to go and see it in person. And it still seems to be that way, even post-COVID, with the experience of attending events virtually as well. It seems to be that the really important events and networking opportunities for learning or networking is very popular in person also. And I'm not sure if that will ever change, no matter what kind of a augmented reality or virtual reality software and hardware and solutions are innovated on. Maybe, and I'm eager to learn and eager to pivot and change what we do. But my guess is that it might never change. People might actually want to attend in person certain important events forever. So that's my hypothesis.
I could very well see that being true. I feel like the metaverse has quite a far way to go if it's going to compete with the entire world around us. And that, I mean, there's of course something about human connection that's, I feel like is quite irreplaceable.
Mm. Yeah, metaverse definitely has potential. But somehow it might still be that you want to go in flesh and blood and meet others in flesh and blood also every now and then. Even if, I mean, we used to do all of our board meetings everywhere in person always. Everyone traveled to Oslo, or everyone traveled to Amsterdam or Helsinki or wherever for which company the board meeting was held. But nowadays we have one of those each year in person. So I mean, the development of technology and the adoption of a new habit during COVID has really changed things quite drastically. But still, for some important meetings, we want to meet in flesh and blood. So I don't know. Time will tell.
Yeah.
And we started live streaming our events already in 2014, and started to generate also revenue out of it from 2014 onwards. I think it became profitable in 2016, or was it even only in 2017? But we started quite early, and we are. I hope I dare to say that we are eager on discovering new ways of delivering the value that we are trying to generate to customers, and live streaming is one of them.
Yeah, for sure. I think I saw some numbers that maybe was at this event that your attendees live something like 66,500 and maybe 30,000 total, like following the rest then online. So it speaks to what you said. Like there's some people that for whatever reasons, are not able to or willing to make it there online, in person. But there's always going to be that portion that want the full experience and are willing to pay for it.
Yeah, correct. And now those numbers that you mentioned are from the Helsinki event, but quite interestingly, in the feedback survey of this year's event, when we send it out to the live stream customers, I might not remember the exact percentage correctly, but it was about 40% who ticked that they are interested in attending in person next year. 40% out of the ones who responded to the survey, out of the ones who didn't attend in person this year, they were watching the live stream or participating through the live stream. 40% of them were somehow interested in potentially attending physically next year. And there is movement to both directions. Some who are on site decide 1 year to watch the live stream, or of course some of them decide not to attend at all. But then there is also traffic from the remote audience to the venue. So you shouldn't be too afraid of cannibalizing your cash cow, so to say.
That's really interesting, because that's obviously something that companies really, really struggle with, and that's why it creates opportunities for new disruptors or innovators to come in, because they're stuck.
Keith Cunningham, who is a business author and an entrepreneur from Texas, he put it quite cleverly. He regarding this topic, he said that you should not fall in love with your product. You should fall in love with the outcomes of your customers. So, for instance, if your job was to, back in the day, to transport ice into cellars for people to keep their food cool, and then someone invented the refrigerator, you shouldn't have fallen in love with transporting ice with horse to people's cellars. You should have fallen in love with making people's food last longer, and be eager on the technologies that come about to make it more efficiently.
For sure. That gives you that longevity as the technology and everything else changes.
At the same time, of course, it's quite natural and quite likely that when a huge technological shift happens, that you might not actually be in the front row, or you might fail at that stage. So, but some businesses can reinvent themselves and continue to succeed over generations and over technological leaps.
That's true. We're coming to the end here, but I wanted to ask a few questions about leadership. Nordic Business Forum is a business leadership event. I think the mission statement is to empower leaders to change the world. You said in a previous podcast that one thing you realized is that leadership is really difficult. So,
yep.
What any general advice, or is it just everybody just needs to try to figure out what their own weaknesses are, what their strengths are, lean into the strengths, maybe patch up some of the weaknesses, or how do you think about approaching the skill of leadership? Or is it a skill? Can it be learned or taught?
Yeah, definitely it can be learned. But yeah, I would still say that people leadership, leading people is the most difficult thing to do, at least for myself. It has been the area in my work where I felt the most being not meeting the expectations, so to say, and the area that has kept me awake at nights the most, feeling that I'm not enough. I don't listen enough. I don't thank people enough, or I don't know how to give them the correct kind of feedback, or I don't communicate enough, or I communicate too much, or whatever it might be. So keeping people happy and helping them develop is challenging. And the expectations that people have for a leader are usually quite high to my feel and experience as well. It's not too often. I mean, I sometimes also wonder how is it possible that when you ask a room of thousands of people who has ever had a lousy leader? Everyone raises their hand. How can it be that so many people have a lousy leader? It's a super difficult job to be a leader. So I still agree to it, and you need to have humbleness in admitting that you don't know, or you are not a good leader necessarily in all areas, and have humbleness to admit it, and try to openly listen to feedback in order to learn to be better. But also perhaps accepting that you don't need to try to be perfect either. So that's it, I feel.
So it sounds like in order to become a good leader, there's a lot of work you need to do with yourself about accepting maybe some of your limitations, not taking necessarily responsibility for, I feel like a big part of leadership is making unpopular decisions, because the popular decisions
also
make themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like as a leader, if you're going to make unpopular decisions, you're going to upset someone, you're going to disappoint someone, and you need to be okay with that. You need to be able to go home at night knowing that people dislike you for what you did, and knowing that it was still the right thing to do.
Or at least if you believe that it's the right thing to do, then you just need to do it. Of course, only time will tell later on whether it was actually the right thing to do. But yes, it's a challenging job, and I fully agree with you.
Final question: you spent a lot of time interacting with some of the world's top thought leaders when it comes to business and business leadership. And is there anything that stands out in terms of lessons you've had, insights, moments that kind of changed how you view leadership, or kind of unlocked something for you?
Well, many. One that comes to mind is again from the 2013 event in Jyväskylä, Nordic Business Forum 2013. Jack Welch, also the late great now, unfortunately. Jack Welch spoke about candor, honesty towards your people, and the fact that your obligation is to make sure that your people know where they stand. They need to know if you are not fully happy with their skill or with their performance, or it should not come by surprise to everyone that you enter a job contract, for instance, for reason X. They should not discover that you have been unhappy in the meeting where you kick them out. So your responsibility is to have candor and in a caring way make sure that they know, or what you think they should do in order to develop and to be able to proceed in their careers and create more value for your customers and for your organization. So that's one, and there are many more, but maybe that's the one to lift up today.
That's a really good way to end it. And I think, as someone said, it's a saying is honesty is kindness, or something like that. That it's actually you're doing the person a favor by being candid, as like you said. I mean, respectfully and so on, but
caringly.
Caringly, exactly. Hape, thank you so much for coming on and sharing about the Nordic Business Forum, your journey. The next event in Helsinki is in 2025, 24th to 25th of September.
Correct.
And the guest, the speaker lineup looks very interesting, as always. You continue to raise the bar there, I think, and I think tickets are still available. So
yes,
so people can grab them and come to Helsinki for 2 days of learning and networking, and I guess empowering and inspiring is perhaps what it's all about.
Yes, certainly so. Thank you as well. Thank you as well, Joshua.
Thank you. Best of luck with everything, and excited to see how you keep pushing the bar with this event. It's so exciting that we have events like yours, events like Slush here in Finland. that are truly category, like we're talking about world class events in terms of speakers and otherwise. So really impressive what you've built, and like I said, best of luck with everything you got going on.
Thank you. All the best to you as well.
Thank you for listening. You can find all episodes of The Growth Pod on Spotify, YouTube, and Apple Podcasts.